Welcome to our channel. Today we'll be exploring the life of Lupe Velez, a famous actress, singer, and dancer during Hollywood's golden age. Lupe may have struggled with bipolar disorder, experiencing extreme mood swings. In her private life, she was often withdrawn and depressed, but in public, she was bursting with energy and craved attention. Her fiery temper, uncontrollable outbursts, and unpredictable behavior became legendary. Known for hosting some of the most outrageous Hollywood parties, Lupe constantly found herself in the spotlight. However, despite her fame and larger-than-life personality, there was more to Lupe than her shocking antics. She was deeply loved by her fans, and the men in her life never truly got over their feelings for her. Yet beneath it all, a dark turmoil was brewing within her, leading to one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking tragedies. This is the extraordinary and tragic story of Lupe Velez. Lupe, born Maria Guadalupe Villalobos Velez on July 18, 1908, in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, came into the world during a violent thunderstorm. Her father was a colonel under Porfirio Diaz, and her mother was a singer for the Mexico City Opera. The family lived comfortably in a spacious house with servants. However, when Lupe was only 2 years old, Porfirio Diaz's 30-year rule came to an end, leading to significant changes in Mexico and sparking 2 decades of civil war. Notably, Lupe soon accompanied her father to various battles during the revolution. She later reflected on these tumultuous experiences, which shaped her strong will and resilience. While American children were in kindergarten, Lupe was riding horses with her father in the Mexican army. She witnessed her brother's horse being shot from under him, saw men trying to kill her father, and even saw her father kill others. The battlefield became her first school. Despite the chaos, she neither cried nor panicked. During the war, 13-year-old Lupe was sent to Our Lady of the Lake College in San Antonio, Texas. Concerned about her rebellious behavior and her relationship with a 21-year-old boyfriend, her parents believed that a religious school might help her settle down. While at school, Lupe learned English and developed a strong interest in dance classes. Although she often clashed with the rules, she enjoyed challenging the nuns and other authority figures. Meanwhile, back in Mexico, the war was escalating, and even Mexico City was caught up in the fighting. Tragedy struck the family when Lupe received news that her father had been killed in battle in Mexico City. This forced her to drop out of school to support her mother, 2 sisters, and brother. However, it was later discovered that her father was only missing in action. He was eventually found alive and returned to the family several years later. Lupe did not regret dropping out of school, which she found boring and restrictive, even though she performed well on academic tests. Her first job was as a saleswoman at Faux Outfitters, a large department store where she earned $4 a week, a decent wage at the time. She secured the job partly because of her strong English skills. After the new government confiscated their home, Lupe's family moved into a cramped 2-room apartment in a rundown hotel. Lupe's salary became the family's only source of income, so she encouraged her engaged sisters to marry and move out to ease the financial burden. As for Lupe, she had no intention of getting married, though it wasn't for lack of suitors. She was an exceptionally beautiful young woman, and since her teenage years, her striking face had attracted many admirers. During this time, Lupe frequently visited the local theater to watch the actresses perform and tried to act in as many films as possible in a single day. One day, she approached the theater manager and expressed her desire to join the show. When he asked if she could dance, she confidently replied that she could. He then suggested she join the chorus, but Lupe firmly refused, claiming she was more talented than anyone she had ever seen perform there. To prove her point, she went on stage and sang an American jazz song. Impressed by her boldness and talent, the manager agreed to hire her as a solo performer for 15 pesos a day, contingent on audience approval. Winning over the audience was no challenge for Lupe. They loved her performance. However, the other performers were not as supportive. They were outraged that she had secured a solo act without any prior stage experience and attempted to sabotage her. Eventually, the Mexican Actors Association intervened, demanding that Lupe prove she was a leading actress before she could continue performing. As a result, she was banned from working. Lupe resolved her problems on her own by running onto the stage between acts. She played the ukulele, performed the shimmy dance, explained her situation to the audience, and asked for their support. Her energetic performance captivated the crowd, leading to 3 sold-out days of shows and even threats of a riot from the audience if she were removed from the lineup. The association eventually conceded, and Lupe quickly became the most popular entertainer in Mexico. She earned 45 pesos a day, the highest salary for any stage performer in the country at the time. Every show she performed sold out, and she became a nationwide phenomenon. Lupe's mother introduced her and her sister Josefina to Maria Conesa, a famous Mexican Spanish vedette known as La Gatita Blanca. Lupe made her debut in a show organized by Maria, where she performed Oh Charlie, My Boy, and danced the shimmy. In 1924, Aurelio Campos, a young pianist and friend of the Vedette sisters, introduced Lupe to stage producers Carlos Ortega and Manuel Castro. Ortega and Castro, who were preparing for a theatrical season at the Regis Theater, decided to cast Lupe in their production. In March 1925, Lupe took on the leading roles in the plays Mexican Rataplan and No Lo Taps, both of which were parodies of shows performed at the Bataclan in Paris. About a year and a half later, believing she deserved a raise, Lupe approached the stage manager at the theater and requested a share of the profits. When he refused, she quit. Without her, the theater's revenue plummeted, and under pressure from the audience, the manager begged her to return. However, by that time, she had already been hired by the rival Teatro Lírico, earning 100 pesos a day. Despite her success, Lupe was eager to take on new challenges. At this point, her mother devised a dark plan to capitalize on her rising fame. As Lupe began performing in vaudeville, her mother essentially became her manager, arranging for wealthy men to spend evenings with her for large sums of money, sometimes amounting to thousands of pesos. These arrangements restored the family's financial situation, but severely damaged Lupe's mental health. She may have suffered from undiagnosed bipolar disorder. While her manic energy made her a captivating performer, she also endured periods of deep despair. When her father returned from the war, however, he was horrified to learn that his daughter had become a stage performer and was using the family's noble name. To appease his outrage, Lupe changed her stage name to her mother's maiden name, Velez. Lupe faced fierce competition from other Mexican vedettes, including Celia Padilla, Celia Montalvan, and Delia Magaña. Rather than engaging in petty rivalries and public feuds, Lupe set her sights higher, eyeing greater ambitions and an opportunity that would soon arise. While planning to expand her theater career to Cuba, Lupe received a telegram from Mr. Woodyard, a talent scout who had seen her perform. Woodyard wrote to his friend, stage actor Richard Bennett, the father of film stars Joan and Constance Bennett, praising Lupe's beauty and talent, and recommending her for a role in Bennett's play, The Dove. Shortly after, Lupe received a direct telegram from Bennett, inviting her to audition for the play and offering a weekly salary of $250 if she secured the role. Overjoyed, Lupe mistakenly believed that she had already been cast in the role rather than merely invited to audition. Mexican newspapers reported prematurely that Lupe Velez was heading to Hollywood. At the time, Lupe was deeply in debt to several creditors. Afraid she would leave the country without paying her debts, her creditors pursued legal action and obtained a debtor's arrest warrant against her. They converge on her house, accompanied by the police, to confront her. However, a quick-witted newsboy helps her escape by disguising her in a baby stroller and pushing her past the crowd unnoticed, an incident that seems straight out of one of her future comedies. Lupe leaves Mexico with only $20, but the money doesn't last long. During the train ride to Los Angeles, a charming and well-dressed man sitting beside her begins flirting with her. Upon arrival, when she reaches for the money to tip the porter, she realizes it is gone. Her charming companion, who turns out to be a professional thief, has stolen her money. When Bennett met Lupe at a Los Angeles studio, he immediately told her she was too young and too thin for the role. Determined to prove him wrong, Lupe went backstage and borrowed props from the dressing room. She used fake hips, breasts, and makeup to create the appearance of an older, fuller woman, even adding dark circles under her eyes. However, when she reappeared, the director laughed, leaving Lupe feeling both angry and embarrassed. The role eventually went to 28-year-old Dorothy McKay, and Lupe left in frustration. Despite this setback, Bennett paid for her hotel room for a week and wished her luck. Like many others in Hollywood at the time, Lupe soon found herself penniless and without work. Even so, she decided to stay in Hollywood rather than return to Mexico, where she had a successful career as a popular dancer and a sought-after companion to the upper class. She had bigger ambitions. Impressed by her determination, Bennett helped her secure a job as a dancer at Grauman's Egyptian Theater. In this role, Lupe performed themed dances that matched the films being shown. She would dress as an ancient Egyptian for Egyptian films or as a scantily clad girl for gangster films, tailoring her performances to complement the movie. These dances were accompanied by special music, and Lupe, along with other dancers, dazzled audiences with energetic performances while the latest blockbusters played on the big screen. With Bennett's support, Lupe gradually adapted to life in Hollywood. His help eventually proved crucial in launching her film career. On Valentine's Day, February 14, 1927, Bennett hosted the Hollywood Music Box Review and planned a spectacular performance for Lupe. He gave her a grand entrance by having her jump out of a giant paper heart to sing and dance. Her performance amazed the audience, who loved the act, leading to an offer for her to join the show permanently at a salary of $35 a week. Lupe happily accepted the opportunity. Unfortunately, the show ended on April 7, 1927, due to waning interest, partly because star Fanny Brice had lost her appeal to the public. Despite this disappointment, Lupe and Fanny became close friends. Fanny, fascinated by Lupe's charisma, called her the most attractive person she had ever met. Wanting to help, Fanny arranged for Lupe to audition with Flo Ziegfeld, who hired her based on Fanny's recommendation. Perhaps success in New York with Ziegfeld was the key to achieving her American dream, rather than continuing in Hollywood. However, just before she was about to leave for New York, Lupe received an unexpected phone call from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer producer Harry Rapf. He had seen her wild dance performance at Grauman's and invited her to audition. The audition was a success and led to Lupe being cast by Hal Roach in a small role in the Laurel and Hardy short Sailors Beware. Shortly after, she appeared in another Roach short, and her film opportunities began to grow rapidly. While she was still able to work for Ziegfeld later, Hollywood suddenly welcomed Lupe Velez with open arms. In 1927, Ted Reed, a talent scout for Douglas Fairbanks, noticed Lupe performing her energetic dance. Impressed by her energy and charisma, Fairbanks, who was looking for someone to play a wild mountain girl in his upcoming film The Gaucho, decided she was perfect for the role. Fairbanks' studio at United Artists offered 19-year-old Lupe Velez a 5-year contract. Her career took off quickly, though the exact path ahead remained uncertain. In The Gaucho, the story follows a girl who falls from a cliff in the Argentine Andes and mysteriously gains healing powers. A temple is built at the site of her fall, and a city grows around it, thriving on offerings of gold from worshippers. When a corrupt general takes over the city, steals the gold, and closes the temple, the Gaucho leads a band of outlaws to take it back. Lupe makes a brief appearance as a tango dancer, delivering a memorable performance. The film premiered at Grauman's Theater in Hollywood on November 24, 1927. The film was a disappointment, receiving mostly negative reviews. However, Lupe stood out and was widely praised as the film's best part. Her next film was Cecil B. DeMille's Stand and Deliver, in which Lupe played a farm girl rescued from a burning building by a British soldier who had joined the Greek army. Although the film is largely forgotten today, a surviving print showcases Lupe's remarkable charisma on screen alongside co-stars Warner Oland and Rod LaRocque. Her performance earned her a spot on the prestigious 1928 Wampus Baby Stars list, which highlighted 13 young actresses considered likely to become major stars. Previous honorees included Fay Wray, Joan Crawford, Loretta Young, and Mary Astor. Lupe's popularity was undeniable. Her name began to appear in newspapers, and the press quickly dubbed her the Mexican Wildcat or the Hot Tamale. The New York Times highlighted her performance, stating that Lupe played the Mountain Girl, a character with a fiery temper and a defiant attitude. She remained resolute in her stance, striking back at any man who annoyed or angered her. She even performed dangerous stunts on horseback without hesitation, all while wearing silk and lace. Around this time, Lupe briefly dated Charlie Chaplin. She later had a relationship with Tom Mix, one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, who was 28 years her senior. However, as his career declined and cowboy roles fell out of favor, Lupe ended their relationship. Back in bachelorhood, a friend suggested to Clark Gable that he pursue Lupe, but Clark Gable refused. Despite his strong masculine on-screen image, Clark Gable received less than positive feedback from former co-stars such as Joan Crawford and his future wife, Carole Lombard, who criticized his poor acting skills. Worried that he might disappoint Lupe and afraid she might ridicule him in public, Clark Gable politely declined her advances. Lupe then began a relationship with popular singer Russ Columbo, but their romance quickly fizzled and they soon separated. Russ Columbo later began a relationship with Carole Lombard, which ended tragically when he died in an accident involving an antique revolver. Lupe continued her acting career with the 1929 film Lady of the Pavements, directed by D.W. Griffith. In the story, a German count, played by William Boyd, discovers that his fiancée has been unfaithful. In retaliation, he declares that he would rather marry a woman off the street. The fiancé, determined to test him, arranges for Lupe, a singer from a notorious cafe, to seduce him. However, when the fiancé reveals Lupe's true identity, the count chooses to accept Lupe. The film is significant because it marks the first time Lupe sang on screen. That same year, she starred opposite Lon Chaney in Where East is East, directed by Todd Browning. Her performance in the film received a rather lukewarm response. However, Lupe quickly moved on to another high-profile project, Wolf Song, directed by Victor Fleming. The film made headlines due to Lupe's scandalous romantic relationships with both director Victor Fleming and star Gary Cooper simultaneously. The film itself, which tells the story of a man torn between his love for the freedom of travel and his growing feelings for his Mexican lover, was also controversial. One notable scene featured Gary Cooper nearly naked while shaving in a river, which was considered shocking even for a pre-code film. Public curiosity about Lupe's love life significantly boosted the film's box office earnings, transforming an average film into a box office hit. Victor Fleming and Lupe's romance was short-lived and ended when the film wrapped. However, they parted ways amicably, with Fleming continuing to support her career. While their relationship may have been one of Fleming's least serious, it was certainly one of his most memorable. Lupe, often portrayed in the media as a wild woman who pursued nearly every man she met, was famous in Hollywood for her affairs with many of the directors and leading men she worked with. She was fiercely independent, preferring to dominate her relationships and expecting submission from her partners rather than equality. As a result, her relationships were often short-lived. In 1929, Lupe landed her first speaking role in Tiger Rose. Studios had previously written her off as an actress, unlikely to succeed in talkies due to her thick accent, but they decided to give her a chance in this full-sound film. The story followed a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer pursuing a murder suspect, with Lupe playing a French Canadian. While much of the attention was on Rin Tin Tin, the star dog, audiences responded positively to Lupe's voice. This success convinced studios that she had real potential in talkies. Lupe's roles were often small, with her lines limited. Her thick Mexican accent restricted her opportunities in dramas or romances, but she excelled in comedies, where she exaggerated her voice and mannerisms to entertain audiences. She fully embraced the Mexican Spitfire persona. However, her off-screen behavior was even more outrageous than her on-screen image. Over time, Lupe struggled to keep up with the wild persona crafted for publicity, as it was largely an act. Although she had been feisty during her early years in Mexico, she was not as out of control as she later became in Hollywood. This change seemed to occur when she realized that comedy was her strongest path in the film industry. This exaggerated persona eventually ensnared Lupe, blurring the line between the real person and the myth. Her life became a mix of fact and legend, with some stories so outlandish they seemed fabricated, while others may have been even wilder than what was reported in the media. Lupe was frequently seen pushing the boundaries of eccentricity, hosting some of the wildest parties in Hollywood. Always craving attention, she would dance to Latin music at her gatherings, while her guests were entertained by adult films, referred to as bachelor films at the time. She often got into physical altercations with female guests. On one occasion, she even threatened a woman who attended her party wearing a red dress, despite the invitation specifying an all-white dress code. In addition to her habit of not wearing underwear, Lupe openly bragged about never bathing, claiming she preferred to rely on her natural pheromones. She was often seen chewing gum, and true to her fiery personality, carried a loaded pistol and a dagger, ready to use them if provoked. As Lupe's relationship with Victor Fleming faded, her romance with Gary Cooper intensified. Lupe was immediately attracted to Cooper. Despite being in his late 30s, Cooper still lived with his mother, who had a strong influence over him, allowing Lupe to dominate him. In public, Lupe praised Cooper, but in private, she often criticized him and made constant demands for intimacy to keep him under her control. While Lupe succeeded in dominating Cooper, his mother proved to be a far greater challenge. She considered Lupe completely unsuitable for her son and accused her of infidelity, accusations that were not entirely baseless given Lupe's reputation. Whenever Cooper seemed to consider marrying Lupe, his mother would threaten to kill herself to prevent the union. This emotional manipulation, combined with Cooper's doubts about Lupe's fidelity and concerns that marrying her might tarnish his clean public image, ultimately prevented him from proposing. Lupe loved Cooper deeply, but her frustration grew as he failed to stand up to his mother. As a major movie star and widely regarded as one of the most handsome men in the world, Cooper's fame fueled Lupe's intense jealousy. She was particularly hurt by his relationships with Marlene Dietrich and Carole Lombard, but what upset her even more was his close friendship with Anderson Lawler. In retaliation, Lupe contacted legendary actress-turned-gossip columnist Hedda Hopper to reveal that Cooper and Anderson Lawler were having an affair. According to an actress who witnessed the incident, Lupe demanded that Cooper include her in all his intimate encounters with Anderson Lawler. When she discovered that the two had met without her, she exposed Cooper to Hedda Hopper, a revelation that, in the 1930s, could have severely damaged his career. At a Hollywood party, Lupe suspected that Cooper had disappeared with Anderson Lawler. When he returned, witnesses claimed that Lupe publicly checked Cooper for the scent of Anderson Lawler's perfume on his body. Despite the toxic nature of their relationship, Cooper remained deeply infatuated with her. When asked in an interview about the greatest gift filmmaking had given him, his response was surprisingly romantic. Lupe. However, Lupe's behavior became increasingly erratic. While Cooper remained passive, this imbalance pushed her into dangerous outbursts, including violent behavior. In one fit of rage, she stabbed him with her dagger, inflicting a wound that required multiple stitches. After 3 tumultuous years, Cooper had reached his breaking point. The relationship had taken a serious toll on his health, which had deteriorated due to heavy drinking and depression, leading to a 40-pound weight loss and a nervous breakdown. On the advice of his doctor, he quit his job. Cooper spent 5 weeks recovering in Europe without Lupe. He planned to quietly board the 20th Century Limited to Chicago, but Lupe discovered his plans and confronted him at the station. As Cooper prepared to board the train, Lupe pulled out a gun, screamed, and fired a shot that missed Cooper. While recovering in Rome, Cooper had an affair with Countess Dorothy Caldwell Taylor, a wealthy older woman who supported him financially during a time when he was nearly bankrupt. In 1933, he married Veronica Rocky Balfe, a New York socialite. However, their marriage was troubled from the start. Cooper had several extramarital affairs, including ones with Marlene Dietrich, Grace Kelly, and Patricia Neal, with whom he fathered a child. Despite his infidelity, he remained married to Rocky for the sake of their daughter, though his relationship with Patricia Neal continued until her divorce in 1951. Cooper's final years were filled with heartache, and he died of prostate cancer in April 1960. Lupe claimed that she ended the relationship after rejecting Cooper's proposal. She said that neither Cooper's parents nor Paramount approved of their relationship, and that she had decided to separate from him because she did not truly love him. She described Cooper as a mama's boy who was always controlled by his mother. However, this description may have been a way for Lupe to hide her own pain and shame at being rejected by Cooper. Later, Lupe told friends that she regretted not marrying Cooper and admitted that he was the greatest love of her life. In 1931, she appeared in her second film for Cecil B. DeMille, Squaw Man, with Warner Baxter, also starred in Resurrection, directed by Edwin Carew. The following year, Lupe starred in the Cuban love song with the famous singer Lawrence Tibbett. That same year, she had a supporting role in Congo, a sound remake of West of Zanzibar, with Walter Houston. In addition, Lupe starred in Spanish-language versions of several films produced by Universal Studios. In February 1932, Lupe took a break from acting and went to New York City. There, she finally got the chance to work with Florenz Ziegfeld Jr. and took the role of Conchita in the musical Hot Cha. The show also starred Bert Lahr, Eleanor Powell, and Buddy Rogers. Lupe then returned to Hollywood, but went back to Broadway in 1938 to star in Cole Porter's You Never Know. In the play, Lupe portrayed a maid pretending to be her mistress, while a baroness, pretending to be a butler, pursued her. The production cast Libby Holman as the mistress, but Holman quickly grew to resent Lupe. She felt overshadowed, believing that Cole Porter had given Lupe too many songs. This tension culminated in a brawl when the two women got into a physical fight. Despite Holman's height and weight advantage, Lupe fought back fiercely and attempted to injure her. Matters escalated further when Lupe threatened to kill Holman. This prompted the stage manager to personally escort Holman on and off stage to ensure her safety. Frustrated by the extra security preventing her from approaching Holman, Lupe devised another plan to harm her rival. Knowing Holman's poor eyesight, Lupe urinated on the polished floor leading to the stage, hoping Holman would not notice the puddle, slip, and seriously injure herself. Fortunately, the attempt was unsuccessful. The show eventually toured major cities in the United States before opening in New York. However, Lupe's performance was not well received. Holman was not the only woman to face Lupe's anger, which was often directed at actresses she viewed as competitors, whether professionally or personally. Lupe was particularly hostile toward Dolores Del Rio, calling her a bird of ill omen. In turn, Del Rio felt uncomfortable around Lupe, knowing that she was prone to making harsh, confrontational, or even threatening remarks. Lupe openly mocked Del Rio. Lupe also harbored a grudge against Marlene Dietrich, suspecting her of having an affair with Gary Cooper during the filming of Morocco in 1930. Her feuds with Judith Anderson and Lillian Tashman were similar to her conflicts with Holman. At Hollywood parties, Lupe would imitate women she disliked, incorporating these imitations into her comedy act. She exaggerated the facial expressions and voices of Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, Fanny Brice, Gloria Swanson, Katharine Hepburn, Simone Simon, and Shirley Temple. In 1931, Lupe had a brief affair with former silent film star John Gilbert. However, their relationship was tumultuous and did not last long due to Gilbert's struggles with alcohol and emotional instability. Gilbert's friends disapproved of Lupe and pressured him to choose between them and her. He chose his friends. Nonetheless, Lupe quickly moved on to someone more suited to her tastes. Lupe first met Johnny Weissmuller in a hotel lobby and was immediately attracted to his impressive physique. Although Johnny was married at the time, Lupe asked him out for drinks that evening, and a passionate affair began. Johnny embodied everything she desired: strength, good looks, and a touch of submission. The two quickly became inseparable, and after Johnny's divorce, they married on October 8, 1933. In addition to acting and their vibrant social lives, one of Lupe's greatest passions was boxing, which she attended regularly every Friday night. However, Lupe wasn't there just to watch. She would arrive dressed in finery and adorned with jewelry, often making her entrance during the second round. As the lights dimmed and the announcer introduced her and Johnny, the fights would pause momentarily as the crowd shifted their attention to her. Lupe would elegantly walk to her ringside seat, waving and blowing kisses to the audience. Once seated, she would carefully tuck her jewelry into Johnny's jacket for safekeeping. Lupe was an enthusiastic fan of her favorite boxers, often using shockingly vulgar language to cheer them on. She would sometimes leave her seat to shout boxing advice or even threaten their opponents. On one occasion, she went so far as to jump into the ring and attack the referee with an umbrella. Even her bathroom breaks became a spectacle, with the crowd applauding and timing their cheers to her steps. Lupe responded with waves and kisses, relishing the attention. Lupe was also known to bet up to $1,000 on a single fight. If she won, she would spend her winnings freely, often causing the audience to go hoarse from cheering along with her enthusiastic outbursts. Her love of boxing eventually led to a brief and secret affair with former heavyweight champion Jack Johnson. The relationship had to be kept secret because Johnson was black, and an interracial relationship at the time could have jeopardized Lupe's film career. Johnson had been a central figure in American racial politics since the early 1910s, especially after marrying a white woman and defeating the promising white boxer James Jackson Jeffries in the ring, an event that sparked race riots across the country. Johnson later opened a chain of integrated restaurants, but was arrested under the Racially Motivated Man Act, which prohibited the transportation of women across state lines for immoral purposes. The woman in question was his future wife, but that did not stop a jury from sentencing him to a year in prison for the alleged crime. Before Jack Dempsey, a former heavyweight champion, married Estelle Taylor, he had a brief relationship with Lupe. Although Dempsey initially found Lupe interesting, her unpredictable behavior soon drove him away. Later, Lupe became Estelle's best friend and started sowing doubts in Estelle's mind about her marriage to Dempsey, claiming that marrying a boxer could harm her acting career. Estelle became so attached to Lupe that when Dempsey attempted to ban her from their home, Estelle insisted that Lupe was her best friend and would always be welcome. This created considerable tension in their marriage, which eventually became too much for Dempsey to bear, leading to their divorce in 1930. For Johnny Weissmuller, not even sleep could save him from Lupe's sudden outbursts. She would unexpectedly hit him with a shoe or slap him while he was sleeping. Shortly after their marriage, Johnny realized that he and Lupe were fundamentally incompatible. She was a social night owl, while he preferred quiet days. She smoked and drank heavily, while he avoided both. She didn't enjoy swimming, which was his greatest passion. The only thing they had in common was their sense of humor. In the end, their differences proved too great, and they didn't share enough common ground to sustain the marriage. On January 24, 1934, less than 4 months after their wedding, Lupe publicly announced an 8-day trial separation from Johnny Weissmuller. Johnny only found out about this through a newspaper article. Lupe explained that if they could no longer stand each other, she would file for divorce. Although they loved each other, both were hot-tempered and argued constantly. Despite the announcement, the couple soon reconciled. However, on January 2, 1935, Lupe filed for divorce again, although they briefly made up once more. The breaking point came one evening when Johnny returned home and noticed that his dog wasn't there to greet him. When he asked about the dog, Lupe claimed that a stranger had entered their home and poisoned it. After further questioning, she admitted that she had killed the dog. Trying to control his anger and avoid harming Lupe, Johnny turned his attention to her parrot, a gift from his former lover Gary Cooper, which kept calling out Gary's name. In a fit of rage, Johnny killed the parrot, threw it at Lupe's feet and said, "Goodbye, Gary." He then packed his belongings and left her for good. In early 1938, Lupe filed for divorce. She described Johnny as a furniture breaker who sometimes hit her with the broken pieces and refused to give her money for grooming, a serious issue for Lupe. The court granted the divorce and ordered Johnny to pay $200 a week in alimony for 3 years. Lupe was awarded the Beverly Hills house and its contents. Later, Lupe explained that their volatile temperaments made living together impossible, even though they truly loved each other. She believed they were better off apart, as their 5-year marriage had left them both unhappy. Johnny went on to marry 3 more times, but Lupe never remarried. In 1933, Lupe starred in The Half-Naked Truth with Lee Tracy and Hot Pepper with Victor McLaglen and Edmund Lowe. In 1934, she appeared in Palooka and Strictly Dynamite, both starring Jimmy Durante. Around the same time, Lupe played Slim Girl in Laughing Boy with Ramon Navarro. The film was released quietly and did not receive much attention. While the film received mostly negative reviews, Lupe's performance was praised. She and Ramon Navarro became friends and were both arrested during a raid for alleged communist sympathies. Navarro, who is now rarely mentioned on screen, faced absurd charges, and Lupe eventually distanced herself from him. It is unclear why people were so impressed with her character, or why there were lingering questions about her. Lupe found more success in a brief role in the comedy Hollywood Party, where she performed a hilarious egg-smashing act with Laurel and Hardy. Surprisingly, the transition to the sound era was successful for her despite her heavy accent. However, adapting to the Hays Code era posed a much greater challenge. The carefree and morally liberal audiences of the 1920s had been replaced by a more conservative and judgmental society in the 1930s, where moral conformity became the norm. While Lupe's off-screen persona was one thing, her wild and provocative on-screen roles no longer suited the new era. The government concluded that audiences wanted films promoting moral values and maintaining a calm tone, rather than films filled with scandal and crime stories. Despite her popularity, MGM Studios decided not to renew Lupe's contract in 1934. In the following years, Lupe worked independently with various studios. She even spent 2 years in England, where she appeared in The Morals of Marcus and Gypsy Melody. In 1937, she returned to Los Angeles and took a role in the final segment of the Wheeler and Woolsey comedy High Flyers. After her divorce and the decline of her film career, Lupe sought ways to attract positive media attention. She believed that appearing in public would spark speculation about her social life. At a party, she met Clayton Moore, a 26-year-old handsome contract actor who was still years away from his future stardom as the Lone Ranger. When the event ended, Lupe invited Moore to dinner and shared her plans to revive her career by appearing at famous Hollywood venues. She explained that she needed a companion and asked for his help. Although Moore was captivated by her beauty and fame, he was surprised by the offer and hesitated. At that point in his career, Moore could not afford to spend money on lavish outings. However, Lupe reassured him with a smile, saying, "Don't worry about it. It's not personal. It's purely business." She promised to take care of everything. Moore quickly developed a strong bond with Lupe, realizing that her Mexican Spitfire persona was merely a publicity stunt designed to entertain her fans. In private, she was surprisingly intelligent and calm. Despite this, Moore also noticed moments of deep sadness in her, as she struggled with depression and the decline of her career. The two spent time together visiting Hollywood's most popular spots, including Friday night boxing matches, which Lupe particularly enjoyed. During these outings, Lupe skillfully influenced the media, and soon the press began portraying Moore as her steady partner, even speculating about a possible marriage. Eventually, Lupe gently ended the relationship, and they parted ways amicably. Lupe gradually regained her public image and starred in 8 films in the Mexican Spitfire series from 1939 to 1943, which became the most successful work of her career. These films revolved around her character, Carmelita Lindsay, a passionate but kind-hearted Mexican singer who gives up her career and homeland to marry Dennis Lindsay, a charming American advertising executive. Dennis was played by Donald Woods in the first 3 films. The Mexican Spitfire series remained popular with audiences until 1943. After Lupe left, the series continued, but never achieved the same level of success. Lupe's next significant relationship was with Ginn Williams, a well-known supporting actor who appeared in over 200 westerns and was part of Errol Flynn's infamous group known for their debauchery and womanizing. Years earlier, Lupe had had a brief affair with Flynn, and the two remained on friendly terms. In November 1940, Lupe announced her engagement to Williams, but the relationship ended dramatically during an incident at Flynn's house. In a fit of rage, she smashed a framed photograph of Williams over his head until it broke, and then urinated on the photograph, effectively ending their engagement. In late 1941, Lupe began a relationship with author Eric Maria Remarque. Actress Louise Rayner shared that Remarque found Lupe's impulsive personality amusing, recalling a moment when Lupe became angry, took off her shoe, and hit him on the head with it. In 1943, Lupe started a romantic relationship with Arturo de Cordova. Arturo de Cordova had recently moved to Los Angeles after signing a contract with Paramount. In September 1943, Lupe revealed to journalist Luella Parsons that she and Arturo were engaged, even though he was already married to Mexican actress Ana Arana and had 4 children. Lupe mentioned plans to retire after marrying Arturo so she could focus on housework and cooking. However, she broke off the engagement in early 1944 when Arturo's wife refused to grant him a divorce. In 1944, Lupe was cast in a Busby Berkeley production called Glad to See You. However, when she arrived in New York, no one was there to greet her, which made her extremely angry. She immediately called Berkeley to express her frustration and returned to Hollywood. The production eventually closed in Boston before it could reach Broadway. Lupe's last romantic relationship was with Harold Maresch, a 27-year-old unemployed Austrian actor who went by the stage name Harold Ramond. Ramond often told dramatic stories of his heroism during World War II, claiming that he had fought against the Nazis, been imprisoned at TOA, and staged a daring escape to the United States. However, there was no credible evidence to support these claims of his wartime exploits or his journey to America. Although friends suspected that Ramond was using her, Lupe ignored their concerns and continued the relationship. She praised Ramond's intimacy, even claiming that her previous relationship with Gary Cooper had been insignificant in comparison. It seemed that this romance was about to bring her something she had never experienced before. In September 1944, Lupe discovered she was pregnant. On November 27, 1944, she publicly announced her engagement to Ramond, claiming that he would agree to marry her because of the pregnancy. However, Ramond only agreed to the marriage after reading about the engagement and pregnancy in the newspaper. He insisted on a written agreement, stating that the pregnancy was the only reason for their marriage and demanding that the child bear his name, as he did not want to be humiliated. Devastated, Lupe broke off the engagement on December 10th, informing journalist Luella Parsons of her decision. On December 13, 1944, an anguished Lupe went to the Trocadero nightclub to meet her friend Estelle Taylor. While there, she confided in her friends about her despair and utter exhaustion with life. Lupe's film career had faded. Her beauty was no longer as radiant as it once had been, and she was pregnant with the child of a man who did not love her. Overwhelmed by her circumstances and struggling with bipolar depression, Lupe decided to end her life in a way she considered fitting for the star she believed herself to be. She carefully planned the scene. Her hair and nails were done, her bedroom was decorated with gardenias and roses, and candles were lit throughout the room. Dressed in her favorite blue satin pajamas, she lay in her king-sized bed, drank brandy, and swallowed 75 Seconal pills. She folded her arms across her chest and waited for the end. The next morning, at 9 a.m., her maid found her and immediately called the police. The first officer to arrive at the scene noted that Lupe looked very small in her king-sized bed. Lupe left a note addressed to Harold Raymond, expressing her grief. The Los Angeles County Coroner's report concluded that her death was the result of end life, caused by the ingestion of Seconal and the shame of having conceived an illegitimate child. In the years since, many have speculated that Lupe's actions were not entirely motivated by the thought of becoming the mother of a child born out of wedlock. Some believe that her behavior that day may have stemmed from an undiagnosed mental illness, such as bipolar disorder. Adding to the speculation, a more sensational and false story about her death gained traction thanks to Kenneth Anger's Hollywood Babylon. According to this fabrication, Lupe became disoriented after mistakenly taking pills and alcohol, allegedly vomited in bed, staggered into the bathroom, slipped, fell into the toilet, lost consciousness, and tragically drowned. This ironic and dramatic version of events, although thoroughly debunked, has persisted in the mythology surrounding her death. However, medical reports contradict this narrative, as Seconal, the substance involved, is known to be extremely fast-acting. Her death was likely instantaneous due to the extremely high dosage she had taken. The day after Lupe's death, Harold Raymond released a statement to the press expressing his confusion over the situation. He claimed that, although they had separated, he had agreed to marry her to ensure that their child would be legitimate. Raymond admitted that he had asked Lupe to sign an agreement, stating that he was marrying her only to give their unborn child his name. He explained that the request was the result of a heated argument, saying that he was in an unstable mental state at the time. Robert Slatzer later claimed that, a few weeks before Lupe's death, he had interviewed her at her home. During this meeting, Lupe allegedly revealed to Robert that she was pregnant with Gary Cooper's child. Cooper was married at the time. According to Robert, Lupe said that Cooper denied her pregnancy and insisted that Harold Raymond was the father. After Lupe's death, Robert claimed that he confronted Cooper, who allegedly admitted that there was a possibility he could be the father. Robert also claimed that he spoke to Clara Bow, who had dated Cooper in the 1920s and maintained a close relationship with him. According to Clara, shortly before Lupe's death, Cooper called her in an angry state, saying that he intended to confront Harold Raymond for allegedly impregnating Lupe. Clara is said to have told Robert that she never believed Raymond was the father. Instead, she suspected that Lupe wanted to pressure Raymond into marriage to protect Cooper, whom she still loved deeply. If Cooper was indeed the father, then his rejection of both Lupe and their child, coupled with her intention to face motherhood alone, would have caused Lupe great distress. Additionally, Johnny recalls that the circumstances surrounding the death of his father's ex-wife are shrouded in mystery. According to him, Lupe's housekeeper found her body but did not immediately notify the police. Instead, the housekeeper contacted Lupe's business manager, Bo Roos, who then called his friend, Beverly Hills Police Chief Anderson, to the scene. Johnny claims that Lupe had planned to meet Raymond that evening, which explains why she decorated her room with flowers, wore a nightgown, and created a romantic atmosphere. Her second fatal overdose of Seconal may have been an attempt to ease her anxiety about the meeting, or perhaps a dramatic but unsuccessful attempt to provoke a reaction from Raymond. Johnny also states that he believes Cooper, not Raymond, may have been the father of the child. The truth may never be discovered, and questions remain about the authorship of her final letter and who protected whom in the hours immediately after her body was found. Lupe's funeral took place on December 22 at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park morgue in Los Angeles. Pallbearers included her ex-husband, Johnny, and actor Gilbert Roland. After the ceremony, her body was taken by train to Mexico City, where a second funeral was held on December 27. She was then buried at the Panteón Civil de Dolores Cemetery. Lupe was known for her intense preparation before performing her energetic, high-energy scenes. She would take some time alone to regroup and get into character. Once the scene ended, she would immediately relax, visibly exhausted. Towards the end of her life, Lupe admitted that maintaining this persona was draining. Those close to her, such as Johnny Weissmuller and Clayton Moore, revealed that this persona was merely a facade. In private, Lupe was intelligent, fun-loving, and much more laid back. In her earlier roles, Lupe demonstrated her versatility as a singer, dancer, and even as a talented dramatic actress. She broke barriers by becoming the first Latina to lead her own Hollywood series. Above all, Lupe was unapologetically herself, wholeheartedly leaving a lasting impression on those who knew her and on her audiences. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed exploring the ups and downs of Lupe Velez's life.